Reclaiming Timeless Ways, episode number 8. Mike Traister, Simon Fuller, welcome aboard to another show. And Mike, another opportunity to chat and catch up and hopefully do some good. You know, in every show, our vision, our goal is, and I think we mentioned it in the last one, is to maybe add one more tool in the tool chest of life, so to speak, to help you, to help someone you care about. Might not be used today, but if you don't have it in the chest,
right,
and an event comes up, you're in trouble. So we hope to equip you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to somebody recently, years ago when I was doing some counseling work. Somebody new came into this facility and they said, where'd you get your NLP training? And I said, what is that? And they started laughing and they said, that's really funny. Where'd you get your training? And I said, I never heard of that. What is it? And they looked at me strangely and they said, well, the work you do is based in large part on NLP. And I said, well, what is NLP? And they said, it's neuro-linguistic programming. And I'm like, well, I never heard of it, but I have noticed over a period of time that if you pay attention to people, they're talking to themselves. And they have these things that they say more than once, maybe many times, that are like key indicators of what's going on inside of them, their belief system. And it has an effect on them, a big effect. And so I would refer to it as like key phrases and things like that. And so people say things like, sometimes I just get sad. Maybe, maybe you're tired and you need to go to sleep.
Right.
Or maybe you've got a growth in your head, scary thought, but
right.
Somebody. Or maybe your thyroid isn't working right. Or maybe you're 60 and you don't absorb B vitamins properly, so your B12 levels are down. And all of those things have a medical component to them.
Right.
Now, do I love medicine completely and absolutely? No, I don't. You've already heard me talk about some of my negative feelings about it. Do I think that it has a time and a place? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that, if you have some noxious weed and you go out and you collect 10,000 seeds and you till the soil and you spill the seeds all over and then you rake them in and water them, you're going to have weeds.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
So if I sit here and I'm going to say, this isn't going to work, this can't work, this never worked, I'm no good at this.
Right.
What am I planting?
Noxious weeds.
Right. What's going to grow?
Yeah.
I'm going to be so exhausted that when I'm done beating the crap out of myself, I'm going to need to go to the ER.
Right.
Because who beat you up? I did. Really? Oh, well done. You did a good job. Very thorough. So without being ridiculous and making the one-size-fits-all or selling this thing for $19.95 a month every month for the rest of your life. The way we talk to ourselves, internally, quietly, automatically, and chronically, has an immense impact on how we feel and function.
Sure.
It's a contributor. Is it the whole thing? Is it the only thing? No. Do I think that that's absurd to say it's the whole thing or the only thing? I think that's absurd.
Yeah.
But what if somebody said to you, I could change the aerodynamics of a car and make it 20% more fuel efficient, right? Like a Corvette versus a Jeep.
Right.
One's an arrow and the other is a brick wall.
Right.
Okay, that's fair, easily,
Right.
So if you have this thing that's just this wall crashing into the air, there's no slipstream. If you built an airplane like that, it would probably never take off. Right. Whereas so maybe one might go 100 miles an hour and blow up, and the other one maybe could go 130 or 40. Huge difference. So what we say to ourselves, and it gets back to things like always and never, I can't, they're good at this, I'm not, I'm stupid, or I'm smart, or whatever. those things have a huge impact on us over time.
Well, yeah, we talked about the power of the mind in our last episode, and it was, this is very closely related to that. And the first thing that pops into my head as you're talking about this is, I feel like most, if not everybody watching, at some point, whether it was at Sunday school or your
Right.
parents or your friends had them put a little note of 1, 2, or 3 either goals
Right.
or things that they like about themselves. I feel like everybody's done that, and they say stick it in your mirror and repeat them every day. Whether it's a goal, say your goals, and or if it's something that you like about yourself, say them out loud to yourself. And what you're doing is you're telling yourselves the positive things instead of all those negative things that we do get caught up beating ourselves up mentally.
Right. Can you build a house that tips over? Yeah, you can. So if that's what you plan, is it going to be a straight house? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Or can you build a straight house? Yeah. Well, what do you have to do? You have to think about, well, what are the components to make, I got to make things square, and I got to reinforce things and deal with the ground and the wind and stuff like that. Right. So that leads me to the next thing, and it was a sad moment, but a kind of a profound moment. It was a friend who was over visiting for a holiday, and she's sitting there, and all of a sudden she starts weeping, and first her face just froze, and her eyes kind of widened, and her mouth kind of, like her jaw got tight, and you could see her whole body was frozen. And I'm like, Joanne, and the next thing I see, her face is just flooded with tears. And it turned out it was the date of her child's death. She had brought the kid to the hospital. She had something wrong with her. The doctors poo-pooed it and told her she just had some minor flu or something. Sent her home. She died. They didn't look carefully enough. She got this horrendously absurd settlement. They really screwed her. They killed the kid, and then, she goes treated with terrible injustice.
Yeah.
I think she wound up with $50,000 that was paid out over a number of years. It was horrendous. But I'm looking at her, and I'm realizing that what I'm seeing is her eyes are like this. She's actually, literally, 100% really visualizing the event again. She's in the moment.
Right.
And it's not just that she's remembering it, it's now. It is projected.
It's re-happening.
It's happening. The sounds, the feelings, the terror, and she's going back and forth in time. And it's never going to end. Every year on this day, it's going to happen again. And I looked at her. It was kind of scary, because you're thinking, if I say the wrong thing, this person is going to hate me, or they're going to feel worse, or lose it, and wind up, in the emergency room, just in a state of deep depression and panic. What do I do? What do I do? And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, the one thing that she's doing that makes no sense is the thing that she keeps doing. And that is she keeps re-experiencing this.
Right.
And I thought, well, what is it that I can tell her about this that's going to make a difference, right?
Sure.
It's not like, all right, when I snap my fingers, you're going to have amnesia and you're never going to remember this again. That doesn't happen, right?
Right.
Maybe that happens in a cartoon, with his fairy dust and a magic wand and some guy with a cone hat.
Or Men in Black with their little laser beam.
Pling! There you go, right?
Memory's gone.
Yeah, but we don't
Not
have
real
that.
life,
We
no.
don't have it. So I said to her, what happened to your little girl was outrageous. It was horrible. These people should have paid more. They should have paid attention. When you asked those questions, you should have got a more serious response. This is all wrong. I said, but if you see something terrible, and I don't remember the example I used. I remember seeing a kid in the neighborhood get hit by a car and die when I was a little kid. And it was pretty much instantaneous, so there was no suffering to speak of. But I said to her, when you see this, I can see it so clearly that you are experiencing her suffering again, but her suffering is not happening again.
Yeah.
And she kind of looked, she went like this, She stopped and her eyes got wide like, holy shit,
Yeah.
you're right,
I'm not even in it, and I could feel the depth of that comment.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, if you see this again, and you probably will, you're going to naturally feel grief.
Right.
And you're going to naturally feel anger, right? And powerlessness. But your daughter is not re-experiencing that. That's done. You have a memory of it. You have this perfect movie,
Right.
but it isn't happening again. She isn't back here going through it again. She's not on an 8-track. It's not a closed loop.
Right.
It's done.
Yeah.
It is forever finished. Her suffering is over.
Yeah.
And you have to remind yourself of that because it's true.
Yeah.
And apparently it made a difference. And it was one of those moments where you want to blurt something out. Where you're just in a hurry to put a fire out.
Yeah.
But if you speak too quickly, you're probably going to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So you have to stop, and you may have to gather your thoughts for 20 seconds, or a minute, or 2 minutes, or 5 minutes, and then bring yourself to find the words that get to the core of what's wrong. Of maybe where this person is not just perpetuating their suffering, but amplifying it. And if you can find a way to non-critically show them, it's like this is part of what's happening in your thought process. All these things are awful. You acknowledge that they're awful. You don't go, oh, well, that's all done, move along.
It's that caution of you want to be sympathetic.
Right.
You need to be empathetic. But how do you be empathetic in the right way? Because
Right.
empathetic means I understand, but, and so you're trying to help them get to a solution versus just saying they're there.
Right.
Because what does that really do? Maybe
Right.
for the moment it
Right.
helps them, but
Yeah.
there's no long-term benefit to that typically.
None.
How can you be empathetic in a genuine but kind and effective way? That's tough. That's a real tough situation.
And I think part of it was horribly tough. Part of what I did was, so my brain was kind of doing two things at once. I was acknowledging that it was terrible. And I felt that it was terrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't just stagecraft. I'm like, that's a horrible experience, unspeakable loss. Those people should have been punished, And I feel deeply for you. But while I'm doing that, I'm thinking, there's something that she's doing that's making it worse. What is it that I can say to bring it out
Right.
that doesn't minimize
Right.
her experience,
Right.
but it helps her not? The term that I came up with for circumstances like this is you don't put gasoline in a fire extinguisher,
Right.
And really if you're blurting something out, with this instinct to just lurch and help, you could be doing that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to. You
Right.
want to help.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so maybe there's 10 components, but there's one component that's happening, and you don't blame them. You don't go, well, don't you see what you're doing that's dumb?
Right.
They're like,
Yeah. Don't you see that you're reliving it? Why are you reliving? I mean,
right, you
right.
shame them.
Yeah.
Right? You say, well, this is in the process of seeing, in the natural process that's universal of seeing this, that we all go through. you're experiencing her re-experiencing it. And
Right.
that part, and we collectively do that,
Yeah.
but it's not so.
Right.
That part isn't happening.
Yeah.
Feels like it's
Yeah.
happening, but it isn't, thank God,
Yeah.
right? And it's like at that moment they go, oh, it isn't?
Right.
No, it is absolutely not. And you can't lie about that.
Right.
You have to be truthful.
It doesn't
No.
change your loss, but you don't have
Right.
to feel that additional anguish of your loved one. It's anguish.
Right,
That part's no more.
right,
Yeah, that's a powerfully accurate and
right.
statement that I can see how that would have made a difference.
Apparently it made a big difference, and she had some firm ground to stand on instead of
Right.
being, like sliding around on a frozen river,
Yeah.
barefoot.
Yeah.
So, and it was scary, because you have to help your friend. But in needing to help them, you're like, oh my God, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to make this worse, a lot worse. And that forces you to stop and to go, well, what do I, how do I separate these parts out? Well, one thing is you don't shame, you don't minimize, you just make a distinction, And this is the fact that it was a commonly practiced thing, that it's something that most of us do unconsciously, and collectively we do it. See, that made it safer
Yeah.
to say it. So,
But very powerful. And Mike, I tell you, it's this a show that we're always trying to help you, help us, help one another.
right.
And those are situations, whether it's obviously that's one of the most terrible tragedies when a parent loses
Unspeakable.
loses a son or daughter, a child. But there's also things like dealing with bad habits, where maybe someone's an alcoholic. There's divorce. There's losing a pet. There's so many bad things, losing a job, and so here you are, the friend, if you will, of this person who's experienced loss, or maybe you've experienced that loss. That can be a very tough subject in any capacity to approach. I mean, so often it's you're just gonna align with them, be sympathetic, and say, I don't want to touch that. And I'm not saying don't be sympathetic. That's not the message here.
No.
Sympathy is good, but if you truly want to help them get back on a better path, timing, trust, have said that in various
boy,
shows. You
yeah.
got to have that trust to be able to talk honestly. Timing is important. And then, how do you say it in a way that's not offensive but impactful?
Right.
Boy, that's tough. And we've all been in those situations.
Oh boy, and it was
And that's
like,
tough. It's
it was
like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Right. It's like you're walking on a string, and
You
up in
want to
the
help
air.
them, but you don't want to do it
I
wrong.
don't want to make this worse.
No.
They're going to hate me forever, and I'm going to deserve it.
Right. Well, I'm going to
It's
make
like-
their life worse in some way.
Right. And so you approach it carefully,
But intentionally and purposefully. And boy,
Yeah. So, got a little bit lucky that day, and I didn't come rushing in,
Yeah.
which is my instinct.
right.
My fool's instinct is to rush in,
Yeah.
And I had to go, whoa, back horse.
I think that's an accurate statement. We're quick to jump in, maybe.
Ooh, yeah. So, taking a moment, stepping back, saying, how do I acknowledge this person's loss? And you don't say something like, I know exactly how you're feeling.
Because you don't.
You don't.
No.
You absolutely do not.
Right.
You can't, because it's not you, it's them.
Right.
It's their moment, So you acknowledge that. So, anyway, that was something that I wanted to talk about a little bit and just give it to people, because in our lives we're each going to have a moment or two or many like that.
Yeah.
And I know when I've rushed in, I've increased someone's grief.
Yeah.
which is the last thing I wanted to do. But that's exactly what the effect was
Right.
of me being in a hurry, you know? We're wanting to fix too much, like it's a formula. And it's, oh, well, you just pull this piece out, put that piece in, and
Yeah.
you'll be better.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not going to be better, you know?
I would argue, Mike, that it's better to say nothing at all than something if you don't, if you haven't, if you're not confident. In other words, if I happen upon a friend, you know, step one might be sympathy until you're ready to say the right thing. And it might not even happen in that conversation. It might happen later. But, you know, better to not say anything to be harmful, or say it when it's right, when you've thought it through and when you can help. I guess I find that very difficult, or have found
It
that
is.
very difficult in times.
Right.
And it
think-
seems like the harder I want to be able to say something, the less the brain comes up with what it should.
Right, because you're in a panic.
Right, in a sense, yeah.
I
For
have
them.
to pull them
I
out
gotta
of the
help
fire.
them. What do I do? And when you do rush in, that can be trouble.
It is. I think the one thing was it had been 6, 8, 10 years for her.
Yeah,
So there was some softening, you know. If it had been a year, God knows,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
maybe we could have only just sat there and
Right.
comforted however we comfort, you know. But that was something that was on my mind. I wanted to bring it up. I think it's important because we do experience loss. You know, people get hurt or sick or whatever. And then, you know, they feel powerless and isolated. We want to help. But that pulling back and saying, okay, what can I do? How can I do this? And doing it carefully really is important, you know.
It is, and you know, most of the show we've spent on the perspective of the person that's consoling or there for the individual who has suffered the loss, who has felt the loss. You know, if I rewind to our last episode, and we talked a lot about how powerful our mind is and what we can do, and you even talked about a patient who had some psychosis, and you helped him, so to speak, step off the ledge that was triggered him on the ledge, and you talked about some of those moments. Maybe somebody watching us today is experiencing some loss.
Right.
What might be a step or a suggestion or a story or something that could help that individual to put themselves in the vulnerable state before they're back on the path of recovery? I'm just trying to think of it from the roles reversed. You know, what might you say to somebody right now who's watching this saying, that's me, I'm struggling? And that might be a tough question because we don't know what they're struggling from, how severe it is, but you know, what's their next step to improve their lifestyle, to improve their mental health, to improve their position today?
I think there's a lot of platitudes that people blurt out, like, you know, this will get better in time or stuff like that. And that might be true.
Yeah.
Probably is true.
To an extent.
But if you say it with too much gladness, you know, oh, you know,
That's almost like the backhanded hello. I don't know.
Right. You're
It'll get
dismissing
better
it.
in time, and you
Get outta
move on
here.
with your life. But yet they're still sitting
you'll be
there in
all right.
grief.
You're dismissed.
Right?
Like,
Kinda.
hello.
Kinda.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a brutal thing, maybe and maybe to say that,
Yeah.
you know, to acknowledge the power of the negativity of the experience. And maybe you can tell them a story about somebody that lost something equally precious, and that a little bit of light slowly came back, but not on day one,
Yeah.
not on, you know, day two.
Yeah.
And then you just say, you know what, we're here.
Yeah.
If you just need someplace quiet to sit, you can come. You don't need to call, just come knock on the door or call if you want, you know. And there's a pot of tea, there's soup, there's whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You want to come play with my dog, that's fine,
Yeah.
you know.
be available, try to, and as tough as that could be in a moment where I know if I'm struggling, I want to be by myself. So I don't want to be by myself, but yet I do want to be by myself.
Right.
And being available, I think, is a big key, or putting yourself out there as much as it hurts, because I think that helps it go away when you acknowledge it.
It does.
A lot of the reason this show began is when we first sat again, drinking coffee and just chatting. You had experienced some losses in your life, and then started reflecting. There was a family member who suicide, had committed suicide, and then that you kind of dug into that. And there were stories where here's this individual that was hidden in plain view. In other words, there,
Right.
and you're like, how could we not figure this out? And then you're looking at the backhanded hello and the way we just dismiss things, and it all kind of shaped what we talk about today. But it all started with that loss and that realization that we don't have to suffer. None of us are alone. We all have
No.
stories we can share and hopefully improve one another's lives. But if you're on the other side of this,
Right.
you're the one suffering.
It's okay to say, I need somebody to just
Help.
sit and talk to
Yeah.
me. Instead of picking up the mask and going, okay, I'll deal with it. And there's like people around who want to be there for you, and all you gotta do is say, I really need some company.
Yeah,
It's okay.
that is okay.
It's more than okay. It's normal, and it's healthy, and those people who are your friends will go, oh, sure. You want to sit in my house, your house, or a restaurant, or
Right.
the park?
Right.
You want to go for a drive. What do you want to do?
Right.
Do something. You want to paint a picture? I don't care.
The idea of a therapist, which
Right.
not just professionally, but even a friend can be that in a sense,
Absolutely.
is sometimes shameful to people. But you
It
said
is,
it
'cause
earlier,
it's like-
it's okay.
It's exposing a quote weakness.
Yeah.
But it's like you're weak because you're alive. If you don't breathe, you're not going to do really well. Is that shameful?
right.
Stop eating. Watch what happens.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I should feel really ashamed that I have to breathe.
Right.
No. How about I'm sad I have to grieve? Should I feel any differently, or is that just basic living function?
Right. Right.
So I'm glad we talked about that. It's okay to say, I need some company,
Yeah.
or I need some support, or maybe you can help me sort this out,
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I can say it doesn't work. Now, if you're trying to help somebody, if somebody's chronically having troubles, if everything is a trauma, that's different.
Yeah.
Then they're just sucking people's energy dry. And they go, no, that won't help. No, that won't help. That won't. Come on, give me.
Right.
I was like Bill Murray and What About Bob?
Yeah.
They're always suffering because that's the only way they know how to get attention.
yeah.
Right. So I don't think it's necessarily a good time to do it because it's too much of a big turn. But you were mentioning one day that I was doing kind of a natural lead-in.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things I'd like to talk about on another program is creating better communities.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean more bureaucrats and more control.
Right.
It means that we find ways to do things better.
It's almost restating the mission that started this show. So we've gone through now officially 8 episodes as we wrap this one up, and that's restating
Right.
really your original purpose. And that is all these tools, all these things that can help you and I, we can help one another, we can be more aware, we can be more conscious, we can intentionally do things. And if a lot of people do that, they say, well, my one vote doesn't count. No, but everybody's collectively does. So if you get enough people taking one of the tools out of that toolbox, doing something cumulatively,
Do you
what
realize
happens?
this whole thing started because of a mistake? A normal act of goodwill,
Right.
and then a joke that never got told. And then a conversation that happened. So I found a purse laying on the sidewalk.
Right.
Right?
And isn't that funny as a segue into the next show, making the community better? That is something so small and so simple, but the individual who I knew, and that's how we got connected, was very grateful that you found that.
Of course.
And did what everybody should agree is the right thing, but unfortunately doesn't always happen.
Not always, no. There's
Doesn't
money-
always get
there's
returned.
money and credit cards there, right? So somebody could have said, oh, there, Santa was here, cool.
With the help of the police, you located, returned,
Right.
and that was our communication. And it's funny because that truly is that's a great step. You're getting used to this, good at
Right.
this whole television thing,
Yeah.
aren't you? That will lead into that show because that you multiply that by
But I did something childlike, and that was I called up to say, how come you haven't left your purse on the street again? I need to find another purse, right? But that person wasn't there.
right.
So I get to talking to you, and I say, "Oh, what's your name, Simon? Oh, what do you do? I own the place."
Yeah.
Funny, very funny. And then a 4 hour, a long conversation on the phone, and then sit down for 4 hours. But it's like if I wasn't willing to be a jackass, to be funny, right? To take a risk and reach out. And if we don't take some kind of a risk to reach out to talk to another person, we're always behind walls.
Right.
So I was being a clown
Yeah.
after I did something decent.
Yeah.
And you don't need a parade, just something normal and proper. But it was the clowning that opened up the door.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And it was like, I keep thinking about that. It's like, well, if I just acted normal or cautious,
Right.
that wouldn't have happened.
Right. Right.
Isn't that funny?
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And here we are getting ready to wrap up one show and prepare you for the next, which is, how do we apply all of this? And maybe it would be a good time to recap in our next show all of the little things just like that, Mike, that open up, allow for communication, allow for relationship,
Risking.
the reclaiming of timeless ways, risking.
Right. Risking.
And what reward might come out of that? What reward is coming out of this show? Well, we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope it impacts your life
My
in a
hope-
positive way.
My hope, and this is to anybody watching, so our shows are about 40 minutes each,
Yeah.
give or take.
Right.
So if you watch it, and 38 minutes is, it's okay, but it's not really. But there's one thought that's useful, and you think, I think I know somebody that needs to hear that.
Right.
That 1 minute,
Right.
or 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. It's like, that was a great investment of 35 minutes, That's the whole idea,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And collectively doing good things. Reclaiming timeless ways. We hope you enjoyed this episode and certainly look forward to catching up with you again real soon. Have a nice day.